And as coalition talks progress here in Germany, there's one thing the three parties hoping to govern together do agree on: legalizing cannabis. And the Social Democrats, Greens and Liberals want a regulated system for the cultivation, distribution and sale of cannabis. It's not just consumers who could benefit, but also the pharmaceutical industry. Germany would follow Luxembourg as the second EU member state to legalize cannabis. And with me in the studio now is DW reporter Pablo Folli-Elias. Pablo, welcome as always. Why are these three parties that look likely to govern in Germany so determined to legalize cannabis?
Right, well, the Greens and the Liberal FDP have long been in favour of legalising it. The SPD, so the Socialists, are also on board now, but they're taking, let's say, a little bit more of a cautious approach to things. But they do realise that it is a social reality, and for that reason, a political approach is absolutely necessary. There are multiple reasons why they've always, the Greens and the FDP have been in favour of it. Most of the cannabis sold here in Germany, as is the case in many countries where it's not legal, is on the black market, of course. And that means that there's no quality control. And also the profits go to normally organised crime. So a good way of, by legalising is that you kind of remedy that issue. And also it ensures the safety of cannabis as, if it's regulated properly, and then there are age restrictions and so on and so forth.
Now, there are countries where it has been legalised, and in fact, Germany would not be the first EU state to do it. How would it be regulated if it were legalised here?
Well, at the moment, it's unclear how they would go about it. They've got a couple of models that they could look at. The most obvious that you've just mentioned is Luxembourg, of course, neighbouring country. But some of the ideas that have already been floated by the Greens and the FDP, for example, is that they would like to see cannabis sold in specialty shops. For anybody who's been to the United States, there are these so-called dispensaries. It's almost like a liquor store where you go and you buy your cannabis. The Liberal FDP have also floated the idea of perhaps having the pharmacy network selling those. But there are people who are against it because they say that, this is potentially a recreational drug, and that would mean that it doesn't really make sense that you would go to get a recreational drug at a pharmacy. Also, with regards to regulation, would be similar in some ways to alcohol in that there would be a minimum age. And if we look at the case of Luxembourg, if Germany were to follow that, the sale and distribution would be regulated very much so by the state. So with regards to supply chain and the market.
You've mentioned a few of them, but what are some of the other benefits to legalization that they are putting forth in making this argument that it is time to legalize cannabis?
Well, you mentioned that one of the big benefits would be, of course, for business. The pharmaceutical industry would be very interested in having it. It's also, there's been this long-held belief that, cannabis leads to harder drug consumption. But, of course, that's now being sort of sidelined, let's say, a little bit. But it's very much related to the pharmaceutical industry and business, where there's a lot of support for regulation.
Right, a lot of money to be made on the taxes there, of course.
Exactly, Claire.
Pablo Folli-Elias, thank you, as ever, for coming in the studio with that update.